Hello and welcome to the IslesNation Podcast. I'm Pete Truskowski, also known as NY Isles Nation. I'm pleased to be joined today by Shannon Hogan of MSG Networks. Shannon, how are you today?
Hi, how are you? Doing great.
Thank you so much for joining us, taking some time out of your busy day to give us some inside info. We really appreciate that.
No problem.
And also here is Mike. Mike, I don't really care how you're doing, so let's get right into
No love for Mike.
That's okay. I'm used to being second or third fiddle here.
So let's get right into it with Shannon. Shannon, my first question for you would be, everyone knows the Islanders' playoff history over the last 23 years. Personally, I'm 21 years old, so Sunday night they won their first series in my lifetime. How much of an effect do you think that had on the players on this team? And do you think it's a huge monkey off their back right now? And do you think that they carried that streak with them throughout the playoffs, even though a lot of them obviously weren't around for the whole 23 years or even close to it? But did they let that weigh on them, do you think? And how much of a relief is it that that streak's over?
Mike, that is 5 questions, my friend, but I will help answer them the best I can. The first thing is, I know how much that breaking that streak meant to the fans, but it meant just as much to the players. They are so aware of the history of this franchise, both the good things that have happened, in the late 70s and early 80s and the cup years, as well as some of the lows that the franchise has had to work through. So I think that they, as much as they wanted to win Game 6 for their team, I definitely got the feeling that they were aware of what that means for the franchise. And, it's interesting because I asked all of them that at the start of the series, at least 8 or 9 guys. And not only was it about breaking the 23-year streak, but to them, it wasn't about just winning one round. It was getting to the next step and taking the next step towards the ultimate goal, which is winning the cup. I don't think that this is a team that feels like they're a one series and done. I don't think that they're done now that they've just taken that next step. I think for them, it was just a small part of getting to the finals.
And Shannon, again. This is Mike, and thanks again for taking some time. And I just want to follow up on that one point. So you haven't got the sense that the team now feels like they're playing with house money. They got that first victory, and now it's, hey, whatever happens is gravy. You really think that they?
No, I don't think that at all. No,
Okay.
I don't think that's the mentality of the team at all. I never thought that was the mentality. I don't think any professional athlete can play like that. I mean, it's one thing. I mean, if you're making the playoffs, you saw how hard it was in the East to make the playoffs. I don't think any team can go in and say that. I think that this team believes, I really truly believe that they believe in each other and believe in what they have. And I think they felt like last year they should have been able to jump that hurdle. And I think that really stuck with them, losing in Game 7, that they were going to make sure that didn't happen again.
And listen, as a fan of the team for my entire life, and I'm a little bit older than Pete. I mean, I was around when they beat Pittsburgh back in '93. So obviously to witness that Saturday night.
Mike's actually just 25.
Exactly. In the crib I was watching that. Thank you.
Yeah.
But so Saturday night, I'm in the building. Pete was in the building. Obviously you're in the building. You've been around a lot of cool events in your professional career back in Detroit, covering the Red Wings, covering the Tigers for a couple playoff runs, obviously covering the Big Chill, which is, for those who don't know, that was Michigan versus Michigan State back in 2010 ice hockey. So where does Game 6 rank amongst your personal favorites in your professional career to this point?
Once I was done with the post-game show, I called my mom because my parents actually came in from Michigan to go to Game 3 and 4 and weren't able to come for Game 6. So I called my mom, and I had no voice, and I said, that was the best sports moment of my life. And she laughed, and she said, I feel like every other year you're calling and telling me that was the best sports moment. I've just truly been so blessed that I've been around some really fantastic teams and really cool moments. I mean, the first thing I ever did when I was covering sports with Fox Sports Detroit in Detroit was the Big Chill. And it was at Michigan Stadium, and my mom is a Buckeye, so she refers to it as the Little House, even though people in Michigan call it the Big House.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, it was just a different kind of moment because I was down on the glass and the rink is in the middle of this huge football stadium. And I kind of did like a 360. I turned around and I thought to myself, oh my gosh, this is my life. And I had a similar oh my gosh moment when I was on the ice waiting for John Tavares. I literally took a second and was just holding on to my our stage manager Glenn because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm wearing heels. I could totally go down on the ice. This would not be the right time to do that. And I just was taking it in like everybody else there and just looking around at the crowd and the handshake line and everything. And I've been really lucky. The Big Chill was something cool, but that was kind of my first moment. The World Series with the Tigers was awesome. But this was, for the magnitude of what it meant to the franchise and how long it had been, I think that this, for me, was the biggest moment. And I'm hoping it's just the biggest moment of this season and that there are more to come.
Hopefully there's more to come even this season.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
But so let's move on to the next series. And I don't know if you know exactly for sure, but did the team find out as late as we did that they're starting tomorrow on Wednesday? Because it came out of left field, and I know on Han and Humpty today, Rick DiPietro said he found out at 12:30 in the morning. So I'm wondering if the team was caught by surprise just like we were with the early start. And do you think that'll have a positive or a negative impact to the team just playing 2 double overtime games last weekend?
I find out about the scheduling through the Islanders PR. So I got the same notification. I don't remember if it was 12:30 or even a little, maybe 20 minutes before that. I don't have a small child at home like Rick does, so I'm thinking he was probably in bed. But I got, I got the text message just about game one, and I didn't get anything about, the following, the rest of the schedule until later this afternoon when I tweeted out what the Islanders put out. So as far as how soon the team knew about that, I don't know. That's not something that was shared with the media. But as far as it being a disadvantage, I can't say. I mean, I'm not out there on the ice. I do feel like there's something to be said for continuing momentum. Do I think they needed a couple days without a game? Absolutely. I mean, back-to-back double overtime games not only is physically draining, but emotionally draining. But I also think there's something to be said for continuing with that energy and momentum. I think if you look at years past and series past, it's not always the best thing if a team's been sitting around for a week. So I think we'll have to wait and see how game one and game two go down in Tampa. But that's not something that's a huge concern for me. I mean, for me, I think not having Pollock is a situation that is disappointing more so than worrying about the schedule. The schedule is what the schedule is. I think it would have been tough if it was a back-to-back situation to start like they did in the first series, but luckily that's not the case. They're going to play a game on Wednesday, then they're going to have 2 days to practice and recover and play another game two on Saturday.
Yeah, and it's funny, you mentioned Pulak, but I think Zidlicki played extremely well the last couple of nights.
Oh, absolutely.
In his place, he was really extremely valuable, one of the underrated guys the last couple of nights.
Definitely.
But, I wonder again. You're around the team, obviously, a lot more than we're not around the team. But before the Florida series, it seemed like 95% of the experts picked Florida, and the big reason was, well, Thomas Greiss versus Roberto Luongo. Clearly, Luongo was the better matchup, and the Islanders they picked it up a little bit down the stretch, but I think maybe it's still in some people's minds. They were looking at the last couple of games where they didn't play a full roster and holding it against them, and obviously the Islanders went out and took care of business. Now they're playing Tampa Bay, and it's a similar situation where it seems like more experts, while they're giving the Islanders some credit, it's still, hey, this is Tampa's series to lose. Does that, when you're around the locker room, do the guys focus on that? Do they really pay any attention to what the experts think, and do they actually use that for motivation, or is it, hey, we're in the playoffs anyway, whether one person thinks we're going to win or 1,000 people think we're going to win, we have a goal to do, we have a job to do here and a goal to obtain?
I don't think, I know for certain Jack Capuano doesn't, because he doesn't read or watch anything. At least that's what he tells us that he does. As for the players, I think it depends on the guys. I think, I think we'd be silly to think that they're not watching some of these other games. I mean, the playoffs are really exciting, and they're into it as well. So I'm sure they hear some of the buzz around them. I don't think that affects them that much. I don't think it's necessarily a motivation thing to be a quote-unquote underdog. I think they're more likely to look at how they played against Tampa in the regular season series. And for most of those games, they played pretty good games. And their last game back in Brooklyn against Tampa was a good example. I think they're more focused on that and the games ahead and playing their best, playing at their best than worrying about what anybody else says. I think that's a trap game there. I don't think you can worry about what other experts are saying with this and that. And Thomas Greiss is definitely someone that doesn't pay attention to that. I mean, he is like the most, I'm sure you've heard Rick and I talk about it. He's so laid back. Mm-hmm. You can hear him in post game. He just is like, lets everything just kind of pass right by, and he moves on to the next thing. And I think he played fantastic in the first round and was a huge, huge part of why the Islanders were able to get past a tough Panthers team. And he was the biggest question mark, as Rick had mentioned, going into the series. I think he was a big question mark as well. And I think he's proven himself in this first round, and hopefully he'll want to continue to do that in the second round and beyond.
Absolutely. And I know, Shannon, we don't want to keep you long here, but I feel like I have to ask, since you're on the inside, 2 questions. 1, what's the best or funniest moment you've had in the locker room over the last 2 years you've been here? And 2, we all saw Rick DiPietro eat the head off a rat on live TV a few days ago. So why don't you tell us one thing we didn't see that will change our opinion of Rick DiPietro? Because from all accounts, he's an absolute character.
Okay, so let's just talk about Rick for a second. I think, first of all, you guys get to see, like, the crazy jackets and the biting off of the rats' heads. Like, that's what you guys see on the outside. What you don't see is how meticulously he watches games. He is very well prepared. He sees things out on the ice that I don't see as a former player. And I think he really has done a great job at bringing that to our broadcast. So while he does have this playful, joking side, he takes his job very seriously, and he's always prepared. And, he works really hard. I mean, I've seen him even in the studio with Alan Hahn and getting ready for that and just kind of mastering the radio side and then coming to the TV side. It's been fantastic to work with him. We do have a lot of fun, but he's the first person to point out, hey, I'd like to see a clip of this. Let's go back and look at this. Or, I'll say, how about we talk about the defense? And so we've found a nice groove together, but you don't always get to see that. You see Rick joking and laughing, but there is work that goes into, the product that he's trying to help deliver on our show. And as for your first question about funniest thing in the dressing room, I have 2, one with the Islanders and one with the Red Wings. I'll go back to one of my funnier things, I think, with the Red Wings, and probably why he's one of my favorite players. 2 guys, Tomas Tatar and Justin Abdelkader, they have had a running, I guess it's a joke. I don't know if you want to call it a bet or a teammate thing. They keep tallies every single day of who scores more at practice, back and forth. And then they'll just chirp each other in the dressing room for every single day. Somebody might have just gotten 1 extra goal. I think that's kind of funny that they're competitive like that. So that was one of the running things that they had in the Red Wings dressing room, that they'd go back and forth. And as for the Isles, I mean, there are 2 things. I feel like you never get a chance to see how funny Cal Clutterbuck is. He's legitimately has him and Johnny Boychuk, I think, have 2 of the best senses of humor on the team. And Nick Leddy is actually really funny too. And I think that Cal and Nick come off very dry on television, very professional, and that's how they've chosen to present themselves. But I will never, ever forget when we were doing an interview my first year here about things you have to have on the road. And some of the guys are like, oh, I need this cable so that I can put my computer on the TV because I want to watch NHL or whatever, or I want to play video games. And I get to Cal and he's like, I brought out an extra pair of underwear. And I'm like, what? You brought 1 pair? I'm like, I'm like, 1 pair of underwear? He's like, well, yeah, I mean, it's an 11-day road trip. He brought more than 11, 1 pair of underwear, but he's just so funny like that. And Johnny Boychuk really is the same way. If you ever see guys smirking in the middle of one of my pregame interviews, especially if it's something light. And Casey Zizekas doesn't count because he smiles at everything. But the chances are if somebody else is smirking, especially a defenseman, it means that Johnny Boychuk is literally 6 inches from their face talking about something totally different. Like, he will just be like, hey, you want to get some peanut butter jelly sandwich? Do you want to, what about this? Like, he just does anything to get them distracted because, they're trying to answer my question or whatever. So I would say that Johnny's probably one of the bigger jokesters in the room, and just anytime he decides to chirp on one of the guys, it's pretty funny.
That's good stuff. Yeah, definitely. I'm surprised Nicoletti has a pulse. We never really comes off like that. So
you guys, he does, and he's done a really good job opening up more with his interviews. I told him that I was like, I think your intermission interviews have been really good. He's quiet. You have to keep in mind he's like a really, he's still a young guy. I know he's got that beard. He looks like he's 30, but he's not. And he actually does. He has a good sense of humor, and I think just some guys are a little more private,
Well, Shannon does a great job, and 3 things I've learned thanks to her segments is that Mikhail Grabowski has to bring his brain on road trips. Thomas Hickey's prized possession are his fish oils.
Yes.
And that John Tavares eats kale chips on Super Bowl Sunday.
He does eat kale chips. That is true. The rest of the team doesn't necessarily support that habit, but hey, it's working for John. If he can score goals like you did in Game 6, I think we'll all be happy.
I was about to say, I'm about to run to the store right now and pick a bag up myself.
He's like Superman.
Thank you so much, Shannon, for taking the time to do this.
Wait, we got to ask Shannon one more question. We have to put her on the spot with a real tough one.
Oh, okay.
All right, Shannon. You're not now. You're just a hockey fan. You're not an Islander paid by them at all. What happened the next 2 weeks? What's going on? Are the Islanders advancing, or are we going to be sitting here doing a post-mortem in 2 weeks?
I have Isles in 7.
Perfect.
I really think this is going to be a long, hard-fought series, but just like anything in the playoffs, anything can happen in the playoffs. Anything can happen. And being healthy, and I call it healthy and hot, it doesn't matter what sport. If you are healthy and hot, whether it's football, basketball, or hockey, or baseball, especially baseball, if you are healthy and hot at the right time, that's all it can take. So I think that, the injury bug has been unkind to the Islanders the last couple of months, but hopefully the rest of the guys will hang in there, and Thomas Greiss will hang in there as well. But I think Tampa is going to be a big challenge. I think it should be a great series, you guys.
I agree with that. Mike, can we let Shannon go to bed now?
Yeah, I'm going to finish Game of Thrones, but while I'm on your podcast, I will say, while you won't have Howie and Butch, calling all the games, we are going to have post games after every single playoff game. So if they go all the way to the Cup, we're going to still have post games, and you can catch that on MSG Plus after the game. Butch Goring, Rick DiPietro, and I will all be involved in some capacity, and we would love for you guys to stay with us for the rest of the ride.
Yeah, definitely do that, because honestly, Shannon the last 2 years has really blossomed into one of the better broadcast people in any sport in this area. She really is. She knows her stuff. She's dedicated, and I mean, generally, she's just really good at what she does. So obviously, we're going to be here till the finals, so make sure you stay with Shannon and MSG and all the gang over there.
And she's great with the fans, from what I've seen at the Coliseum in Barclays. Never turns down a picture, always smiling. She's the best.
Thanks, guys. You're making me blush.
All right, thank you, Shannon.
Have a good one.
Thank you. And that'll do it for us here tonight. Once again, thanks to Shannon. And we'll start the second round tomorrow. So let's go Islanders.